Hi, I'm Jeff Rosenfeld. I'm the editor of the Bulletin of the American Meteorological Society, and we're here at the AMS annual meeting. And I am here with a special guest, Bill Hooke, who is familiar to me as a fellow staff member of the AMS, but more importantly, a former director of the policy program and now associate executive director and a senior thinker, non-parallel. What's your title now?
Geezer.
Geezer. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
geezers have a lot of wisdom to impart, if I remember correctly. And
Sometimes.
yeah. And one of the wisdoms we're sort of looking for today is kind of an overview of where the community is as a whole. Since at the policy program and at AMS, you deal a lot with the evolving relationships and synergies in the community.
Yeah.
So maybe you could sort of give us an idea, first of all, what it means for AMS to get together as a big community in one place.
Okay, I think that's a terrific question, and particularly as we're coming up on our 100th anniversary in the year 2019 or 2020. For that 100 years, we've had a sort of motto or a vision that says we're about advancing atmospheric and oceanic and hydrologic sciences, and also about using those advances to benefit society. And it's that second part that represents the significant piece of AMS meetings today. In the past, the real hang-up in benefiting society had to do with the really kind of crude state of our science and our technology for observing the atmosphere and all the rest of it. But today, that part, despite a few jerks and fits and so on, is going rather relatively smoothly. We're getting new computers, we're getting new observing systems, whether they're spaceborne or Earth-based, and we're learning a lot about how the Earth system works. But there's a widening gap between that advance and our ability as a society, as 300 million Americans, as 7 billion people worldwide, to benefit from those advances. We have to learn to be as disciplined about the application of our science as we are about advancing the science itself. And the last few years, this meeting has increasingly been about advancing the structured way and the kind of framework we have for applying what science we know. A key part of that, there are two parts of that. One is how do weather and climate and oceans affect society? What are the impacts of those things on society through agriculture, through their effect on transportation, through their effect on energy production and use and so on, the environment and all the rest of it. And secondly, how we respond as a society. We'd like to not have to think through everything we do very carefully. We'd like to be on sort of automatic pilot. An example is when we drive. You don't think a lot about, gosh, I'm just making hundreds of mistakes. I'm always either going too slow or too fast or too far to the right or too far to the left. We just smoothly make those corrections without even thinking about it. We're more conscious of our destination and so on. We need that kind of automatic pilot when it comes to our weather-related decisions.
Now, you've never seen me drive, but I'm assuming you're correct about that. But one of the things that I've noticed about the meeting and the way people are interacting with each other is that there is some semblance of autopilot setting in. Not in a bad sense, but in the sense that some of the issues that might have been more difficult to iron out in the past, collaborations and things, seem to be going more smoothly. Maybe that's what you're referring to when you say the research enterprise is moving along.
Well, and we need to get the policies right. So think about an analogy with an anthill. An anthill is doing just about a perfect job of dealing with the environment as a threat, as a resource, and as something to be protected. It's just about ideal for the ants. Food can come in, water can come in, waste goes out, predators are kept out, the temperature is just right, and so on. But there's no ant who has the big picture. And so they are working on the basis of policies, very simple chemical codes that sort of tell them what they should be doing. We're in a search as the human race for the right policies that help us balance our needs to protect the environment and to draw energy and food and water from the environment and protect ourselves from threats. So we've just got about a century maybe to work all that out. And this meeting is a place where that's happening. I think we should be optimistic and pretty positive about our chances.
Now, you've spoken a lot about our chances and
Yeah.
what it means to plan for a future that we don't
Right.
know very well. What does that mean in terms of policy, and what does it
Right.
mean as a science?
Well, one big challenge and opportunity, both for the policy and the science, and you see it here at this meeting, is for the private sector and the academic sector and the government sector to learn how to work together in this new sort of century where everything is pretty critical and we've got to be functioning right. There's been a tendency in the past to think that the government just reaches out to academia and the private sector when it feels like it. And what we need now is something that's more of a partnership and a collaboration at a strategic level. And it shows up in all kinds of issues. How we provide data on the weather. Do we buy hardware or do we buy data streams? How do we create networks of surface sensors? We've got thousands of networks of surface centers nationwide. Many are private sector, just a few are owned by the public sector. How do we rationalize all that so we're not, we don't have too much redundancy and all the rest of it? Those issues, how the private and public and academic sector work together domestically and also internationally, those are hot topics here at this meeting.
And do you see a difference in the way, say, younger people approach these kinds of problems than, say, older people who've been around a while?
Wow.
And I'm not singling anyone out, but has there been a change in the way the membership thinks about public and private divides or even disciplinary divides?
There's a great saying in academia, which I think applies more generally, which is that progress occurs one retirement at a time. And you see that in the young people. One of the great privileges for my work in the AMS is I work a lot with early career scientists. And you learn quickly that the future is in very good hands. And it's largely for the reasons you just hinted at, that the younger generation sees itself much more as sort of citizens of the world. They're proud to be Americans, but they know how to navigate their way internationally. They understand how to deal with multicultural and diversity kinds of challenges and issues and opportunities, and taking advantage of what other countries have to offer and all the rest of that. They're very good with social media, with Twitter and Facebook, Instagrams, and all the rest of it that are the communication media of the future. They're used to working with sort of just-in-time information, where they use sort of quanta of information that they're stitching together through searching data sets and information all over the world, and it's a whole new sort of thought process, and much better, equips them much better for the pace of today's problems and also the scale of them.
Yeah, it seems like the scale of the problem can be vast or very tiny.
Right,
Depending on how
that's right.
Yeah.
It is vast, but we're going to solve it by tackling it in a place-based, sort of moment-by-moment way. Meteorologists are very good at that.
You often talk about how meteorologists need to think like meteorologists to solve them. Are there ways in which we're not thinking like meteorologists enough?
Well, I can say that I think society as a whole is not thinking enough like meteorologists. Meteorologists have known, as long as there have been such a discipline, that they have to cooperate, not just within the United States and other individual countries, but globally, because there's one atmosphere. If you and I want to know the weather over the U.S., here in Phoenix today, We needed some help from people in Russia and China a week ago about what weather conditions were there. So meteorology is an inherently cooperative field. And I don't think it's putting too fine a point on it to say something like this. If as a world, as 300 million Americans, as 7 billion people, we learn to respect each other and collaborate, value each other's dignity and perspective, we'll discover that we'll be able to deal with Earth as a resource, Earth as a threat, and protection of the environment as a collateral benefit. If we attempt to solve those last three problems without cooperating fully, we're likely to discover that we'll lose it all.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to collaborate again. And
It's always a pleasure, Jeff.
I appreciate it, and hopefully this whole meeting will be full of collaboration.
It always has been every year I've been coming to it.
Thank you.
Thank you.